This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
The names have been redacted to protect the innocent and the guilty. Because everyone's guilty here.
And there it is, the intro.
Dang.
Yep.
Dang. Got him.
Never
Boom,
know.
roasted.
I've been watching White House Plumbers.
Oh, yeah.
Nixon Watergate stuff, which I've always been interested in the Nixon stuff. And it's apparently about the two guys that actually caused like, the whole issue. No, not my role model. I can't remember the movie where they did this long interview. It was tapes where they were showing like these long interviews with Nixon after Watergate. That guy is so interesting.
Well, when you come to Memphis in a couple of weeks, you can see my Nixon decanter I got from my neighbor who just moved out across the street.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I watched, I think, the first episode of that, and I totally forgot that I watched it. So now I got to go back and finish watching that show. Oh, one so far.
There was only one. The second one just came out.
They're not doing the like binge watcher friendly.
No, but also pisses me off. It's freaking, it's discriminatory against my people.
do either of you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I love Curb.
Okay. I just started watching Curb and Seinfeld together. Yeah. Everybody's told me that it would be my style.
Curb is 100% your style.
Makes me uncomfortable, and I feel like that's tough to do.
Well, that's because you're in the first couple seasons. I remember some things in the first couple seasons where I was like, oh, this was a different time.
Did you know, though, I watched a documentary last night. There was a guy in 2003, 2005, somewhere in there, accused of murdering someone.
Oh, yeah. And he was saved because of Curb. Yeah.
He was falsely accused of murder. The detectives are on tape now admitting that like they deceived him during the...
Yeah, they pinned it on him.
He was like, I was at a Dodgers game. And so his lawyer like went through hours of footage and was like, there's just too many people there. But I remember somebody was there filming something, and literally they were filming an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm,
which is a great episode.
It was one of the best episodes. The carpool lane.
Yeah, it was an amazing episode.
Literally, they got in contact with Larry David's production company, and he just happened to be in a shot with Larry David. So they were able to place him there and then use cell phone tower records, make it basically not possible for him to have traveled to where this person was murdered. It was a 40-minute documentary, and I thought
I've seen that. I'm pretty sure I've seen that. It is really good. And it's just, wow. I mean, the luck involved in that, dude, it's crazy.
His sister's like, I just think about what happened if he decided to watch that game from home that day instead of going. And I'm like, jeez.
I mean, they railroaded him. It was a sham. But anyway, yeah, Curb is great.
I watched that last night when you were talking about TV shows. I had to tell someone.
I love Curb.
Yeah, I'm watching Seinfeld for the first time too. Kind of Seinfeldtaneously. And it's been fun.
My dad likes Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld's humor isn't necessarily my style.
It's, I don't know, passive aggressive sarcasm is my style. So
yes, we know. Don't tell anyone on this call. Listeners, did you know that?
We had a call at work today that was me and Andrew. It was everyone on the dev team, but it turned to me and Andrew just shit talking each other for 5 minutes. Someone had to stop it.
Someone was like, does anyone else know what they're talking about? And I was like, oh, wait, there are other people here.
Yeah, that's the only thing new in my life besides leaving for Canada Monday.
Old Canada. Get your maple syrup and poutine fix.
You know it. I tried to order a sweet shirt that said bring your A game.
No.
But they didn't sell it my size.
God. You would
if you buy it up there, it'll be authentic.
One of the best meals I had in my life was at the airport in Montreal. It was these crepes that had like little maple flakes on it. It was amazing. I hope it's still there.
I don't know if this is a judgment on how good that was or how bad your taste is.
Both.
There's a lot of things that can be extracted from that.
Both.
That's funny.
So yeah, I know we have an old work trip coming up, which is
old work.
It's a boomer trip.
Yeah. They're making me come.
Team's a good size now, right?
Yeah, there's 30 something.
Bigger than yours.
Dang. Yeah. Thank God.
Got him. Tell Spencer we got him. Yeah, it's a good size team.
Let's talk Ruby.
Did you see Ruby 3.3 preview 1 is out today? You gotta ship that to production today.
Done.
Don't tell Spencer.
I mean, we're leaving for a week. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
this is the ultimate deploy on Friday. Deploy Friday before vacation.
The thing is I would do it.
We know you would.
Never gone wrong yet.
It's not a super exciting release, actually. There's a bunch of performance improvements for YJIT.
Yeah.
And it also introduces the RJIT, which is cool, the pure Ruby one, which is neat because it doesn't require a C compiler like the MJIT did. And I think it replaces that entirely.
If you have more questions about that, you could listen to episode XXX a couple weeks ago with the maintainer creator of RJIT. It's really fascinating.
But
RBS release?
Honestly, there's not a lot of other stuff in here. You can check if instance variables are defined a little bit faster now because of object shapes. And then they dropped the readline extension and they have reline now, which is a pure Ruby version of readline. So you don't need that dependency anymore, which is always good. Removing dependencies, especially those C extensions, are make it more portable, which is great. I mean, that's like the majority of things. I like the sections like C API updates. The following APIs are updated. There is nothing listed under there. So it seems like a pretty simple release that will just add performance and doesn't add any necessarily like features. And probably that's going to be more along the next release or other future releases, but still chugging away at performance. And the YJIT is getting to be like pretty good.
Shit.
Too legit to quit.
Ruby Kaigi's happening while we record this. Did either of you watch the interview with Cinderlove that Searls did?
No.
They had a Ruby core team meeting in Japan because that's where Ruby Kaigi takes place. And Aaron was saying that there are two people working on a parser to replace the one now. You have Kevin Newton, who's working on YARP, another Ruby parser. We've talked to him about that. Yep. And he works at Shopify. I think Aaron said that he's been helping out a little bit with that. And then there's someone else on Ruby core who's taking the existing Ruby parser and trying to make the improvements just to it. And so I guess they're trying to discuss now which one goes in.
Cool. Well, I mean, that's good. It's nice that in a way you get the competing like implementations and then see the pros and cons of the approaches and then can decide on like, oh, let's use this one. It's got these things. We could probably pull ideas from the other one in and make Megatron or whatever. And it's all better that way.
Wow. The robot.
It's cool, the parser stuff, because when we were talking to Kevin, and I think Aaron mentioned this yesterday in that video I watched, it'll help other implementations of Ruby. They can use it like Truffle Ruby, JRuby. And that sounds awesome.
Which was also like an issue for a long time because there was no like official Ruby spec, so that each of those implementations had some variations, or it was hard for them to be 100% compatible with each other. So another one of those things that we can standardize, and alternative implementations can end up being much more reliable because they will work much more similarly. That's good stuff.
Yeah. And a lot of this really feels like it's also going to help with Ruby tooling, which is something like we mentioned last week that Tinderlove talked about, like with the language server protocol. So yeah, I don't know. I'm a fan of everything going on and have just kind of still happy with Ruby.
Oh, you are? I thought everybody was going to PHP this week.
Yeah. A couple of big streamers started using Laravel and started this big campaign for it.
Yeah, it really went viral this week, which is great. I love that. We just need to do the same thing for Rails.
The conversation came up somewhere, Hacker News, Twitter, I don't know, wherever I read conversations about Laravel versus Rails. And it was once again, Laravel is a better framework. than Rails was like the comments, and I can't disagree. It has so much stuff.
Yeah, but Ruby is the better language.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the solution.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that library-wise and commercial-ish support and stuff is like first party right from the creator, which is awesome. And that means that he's building things for the community all the time and not extracting them from other products. He's like addressing issues directly, which is nice. But PHP will never beat Ruby.
No.
That's just the thing. Fill in those gaps there and we can end up in a similar spot, but we're behind. We have to catch up. And then where's Taylor Rockwell going to be? He's going to be in his Lambo somewhere ahead of us because he'll just keep chugging away.
Yeah, but DH is a race car.
He's got
a lot of race cars.
A lot of race cars. I think I'd take a race car over Lambo.
I don't know. I feel like that's a whole episode in itself.
Yeah, we'll do a drag race. Lambo versus race car.
All right, let's talk about something Andrew has been dealing with. So therefore, subsequently, I have been dealing with.
Oh God, now I have to deal with it too.
Yes.
Here we go.
So
I can't
now the whole community listening to this has to deal with it too.
Don't.
I'm going for it. You don't.
All
you
right,
can just plug
let's
your
hear it.
ears. Okay, so
crying.
Is he trying to decide whether to keep using Rails or Laravel?
So we have this form that we're building. Forms.
Oh God, forms.
No,
forms are the worst.
Oh God.
Forms, they're on separate pages though, but we're auto saving them. And you think, okay, that's not a problem. We know how to do that.
Yeah,
but do we though?
Well, the problem is, so Hotwire is what we try to use first now. And the problem is for us, Hotwire is not very good at auto saving and displaying errors in a form, because if you do the turbo frame approach, right, it's going to wipe away the whole form. You're going to lose what you're focused on, stuff like that. We then went into this like, well, we could just try and figure out what fields have the errors.
What's the issue here? So you're replacing the form initially.
With errors because we're auto saving.
So what's the problem with that?
So we wanted to display visually a bunch of errors and error messages.
The problem we have is first we're throttling inputs. So we're only submitting every...
Oh, you're saving it like...
There's a piece of context here that you left out that will make this make a little bit more sense. We are not using Turbo to submit the form. What we are doing is I set up a JavaScript, a stimulus controller, and what it does is on input, it will submit the data via fetch request and actually take the response. The response will be a Turbo stream, and then we render the Turbo stream from JavaScript, which you can do. So it's like render. It's like a turbo.render stream message, and then you just pass it like the body of like the request.
And if you use request.js, I was the one that added the turbo stream injection into that. So if it returns a turbo stream, it'll automatically insert that, which is pro tip for anybody. But
you should use request.js.
Yeah, and request.js wraps fetch in a very similar style to the way that Turbo itself implements fetch and response. So that's a pro tip to check out. But you are doing this as they type, like on input and not on blur?
No,
like when they're done typing?
We had the same problem with blur, because what would happen is blur can happen if you hit tab and go to the next text field. So then it submits the whole form.
And you want, so like you have 10 fields, you finish the first one, you submit that to the server to autosave, and then it's like, yeah, but all these next 9 that you haven't even gotten to are like invalid.
That was a problem. That was easy. That was the easy part.
So think this way. Okay, you got 2 fields. You fill out the first one and you tab to the next one. So the first field, though, is invalid for some reason. It's not a presence validation. It's a constraint in the database, so it fails. The form re-renders, you lose focus on the input you just tabbed to because it re-rendered the form.
Sure. Did you guys switch to using like Morph to use a custom turbo stream so you could just keep the focus? Because I believe morphdom will keep the focus for that.
Built into Turbo using Morph? Is that one of the...
you can either add your own custom turbo stream by like registering it as a stream action, or of course, the man, the myth, the legend, Marco's already built that. in the Turbo Boost repo, which will just like install morphdom for you. And so you can just use the helpers. But that's one of the worst problems of the Turbo update, where it's like, yeah, technically it can update something on the page, but especially if you're doing anything with inputs and whatever, it's going to just blow everything away and then insert new stuff. And morphdom will just like, we'll make the minimal set of changes so you don't lose focus and you don't lose these things. That feels like a rough edge of Turbo as is, and it would probably be nice to, I don't know if it'll ever become a thing that's built into Turbo, probably not, but at least it's easy to add.
I think Turbo's its use case with forms that's really good is you click submit, because then you don't have this problem. The problem we're running into is this auto-saving stuff.
Yeah.
And we did this before the stimulus preflex, and part of the way we did it was just saying this input change, like just update this one. And but also that we use morphdom via stimulus reflex, and I still have some morphdom trauma. I think I have some scars from morphdom.
Interesting. I haven't used it that heavily, so I don't know like rough edges on it, but that's good to know. I'll have to try that sometime, because I've done pretty generic submit the whole form, refresh with errors, and like that's generally the use case that gets shown, and it's easy.
It's great.
But it's becoming a thing where the autosave is sort of an expected feature. If you're on GitHub or something and you're writing a comment and you close a tab on accident or whatever, or like your browser gets closed and that comment you still want, and they like will save it in local storage or whatever it might be. But it feels like that's becoming as like the web gets more and more robust over time, these are like features you need all the time. These aren't things that are nice to haves anymore. Kind of required to have a good application these days to have the auto saving kind of features there. So I feel like if we don't keep working towards that, then we're always going to be behind other things like Laravel, who are going to go address that, because they're going to see that's a common issue. And we want to provide a framework that addresses and makes these things like easy out of the box. If it's still a pain to do that in Hotwire, then like it'd be really nice if that was addressed.
Right.
So it's just a philosophy thing, I think, of maintaining these projects or whatever.
Livewire would be kind of the equivalent in Laravel space, Caleb's project. And I know that he has solved for this pretty early on. I guess that's how I felt too, is like, I feel like we can't be the only company trying to use Turbo and autosave with validations. I don't have a good way to solve this out of the box. I don't know what to tell you to do to solve it.
You have to reach for some extra thing. You either got to build the morphdom integration yourself or use a third-party library. And it just feels like it would be nice if we had something built in that just shipped with it. That was like the batteries included thing of Rails. You've got action text and action mailbox. Two really powerful things that a lot of applications may not use, but they're there, batteries included, ready to go when you need it. And it feels like the same thing needs to be done also on the front end side. Like Turbo and Hotwire in general solve huge amount of problems that we had with just Turbo links. That felt extremely incomplete. This feels like 80% there, but it's still got another 20% to really make it feel like, oh, the stuff's already done for me and this is perfect. And I don't have to reach for extra things. And it's also another one of those where it's like, if it's officially maintained, it gets battle tested by 100 times more users or something if it's built into the framework itself and everybody's using it, versus like, unfortunately, not everybody's going to be using Turbo Boost or whatever, extra libraries. And so they'll have really good support from people like Marco, but not all of them will. And that makes it harder. And it won't be, those projects don't have their docs in the official docs, and there's less eyeballs on it, unfortunately. And it's like, it would be great to have more of that built in, because I think you do have to add the morphdom library, but that could be something where it's like, well, if you've imported it and it exists, then we can use it. But if it like, you don't have to ship with it by default, you can just optionally include it or something. And I think that's a good way of doing it, where it's like image processing for like active storage. You can have VIPs or ImageMagick or nothing. and use whatever is available. And if morphdom's not there, then okay, but at least we can like be ready for it if you do want to add that.
Yeah.
So it could be lightweight out of the box, add your extra dependencies and like enable features or something. I think that would be cool.
Monitoring, like web development and lots of other things, can be complicated. There are tons of tools and techniques, but you just want to know that your app is up and that your customers are happy. When your customers encounter a problem, you need clear, actionable intelligence, not walls of charts and reams of logs to tail. And that's why the team at Honeybadger built Honeybadger, the monitoring tool that they always wanted, a tool that's there when you need it and gets out of your way when you don't, so that you can keep shipping. Know when critical errors occur and which customers are affected. Respond instantly when your systems go down. Improve the health of your systems over time, and fix problems before your customers can report them. Honeybadger is the application health monitoring tool built for you, the developer who cares about a quality product and happy customers. Start monitoring today at honeybadger.io. And best of all, Honeybadger is free for small teams, and setup takes as little as 5 minutes. Once again, that's honeybadger.io.
We're solving it now by, we're just going to use Turbo Streams, broadcast a custom event with the errors, and just, unfortunately, client side will have to manually append those invalid errors.
Should do that morphdom. I think it might do most of what you need, but you know more about it than I do because I haven't really used it in depth in the past.
I think for that use case, it would be all right, actually. And plus, it's pretty scoped. It's not a huge form. It's only like 3 or 4
That's
fields.
good. So it would be fast to apply. Or just go over to old Phoenix and just have it done server side.
We'll just rebuild this feature in Phoenix.
Yeah, might as well, right?
I
mean, Jose Valim was very convincing. So
that was the most convincing episode we ever recorded. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
I think why I'm so frustrated is because I built the autosaving and it worked. It worked great. It was perfect. Everything was good. And then one day someone was like, oh, what about validations? And I was like, oh, didn't think about that. And then I kind of added like a little hacky solution. It worked good enough. And then we realized it wasn't good enough. So I spent several days architecting a solution to like figure it out. And like at the end of it, I was like really happy with myself. I was like, this is perfect. It works exactly the way we need it to. And then fast forward a few more days and it's like, actually, there's another problem. We're going to have to rewrite this again. And I'm like, I've just been rewriting and rewriting. And it's just part that pisses me off. It's like the smallest part of the functionality that is like causing the biggest issue. Disabling a button, showing a tooltip and running a validation error should not be taking me weeks.
That's like a really interesting point about a lot of software development where it's like you can build the core so fast. And then when it comes to actually doing the detailed work, like the animations and other little things, you're like, oh my gosh, this is where 90% of the work is. And I felt like I already got 90% of it done, but the last 10% is really hard, unfortunately, or takes a lot of time. And those are like really demotivating moments to get into where you're like, okay, we can solve it this way. And it's straightforward solution. It'll take some time to do. And then you do it and you realize it's still not right. Like it's still, as it turns out, I thought of another edge case and that's not going to work. And we have to throw all that away. That sucks. I hate that.
Andrew, what could we talk about that would bring you joy right now?
Laravel.
What would spark joy in your guest bedroom in Phoenix, Arizona?
So you reminded me of when we're at RailsConf. I have a picture of this. In our hotel, there's 4 elevators, and then there's like a door on the one other wall. And there is specifically a sign there, that there was for like an emergency button or something. It's red, but it said, press the 3-inch round button for help or whatever. It like specifically was like the 3-inch button, not the 2-inch button,
4-inch,
not the 4-inch. And we were like, what the hell? Somebody had to have specifically made that decision to write the words on the sign. for the 3-inch button. You're like, what happened? What was the story that led to this becoming a thing? Those are pretty amazing little things that you might see around the world. I definitely had to get a picture of that because it was like, what is happening here?
At my therapist's office, I have a similar thing, except it's not a button. It's just the sign that says, don't take the elevator during a fire. Elevator spelled wrong. And it bothers, like, I can't not look at it every time I go to therapy. I like have to work through it in therapy every week.
That's hilarious.
3-inch button, 3-inch round button. That feels like a designer giving a developer specs.
Yeah. And like very literal. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to put a 3-inch button in my house somewhere.
It's got to be round. Can't be square.
Can't be a square one that's rounded, fully rounded dash full.
With a border radius. Please press the 3-inch rounded 12 pixel border radius. Andrew, did you figure it out yet?
I don't know. I'm miserable.
Oh. You want to talk about race cars?
I was playing with functions again on Vercel in Ruby.
Tell us more. Oh, in Ruby?
Yes. And I don't want to explain why I built this because it's not going to make any sense.
No.
But
no.
Now you have to.
Well, get to that. I built a serverless function, and what it does is that you can pass it a param, and this instance for a brew formula, so like ASDF, YJIT, curl, etc. And you can have it either return a JSON response with the data, or you can have it return like a text document of summarization of that data. And I basically was building it so that no matter where I send a request from, whether it's a curl command from my command line or a request from my shortcuts app on my iPhone or through a Ruby gem or whatever, that this would always return certain data in a certain format everywhere. I think what I ran into was, okay, the way that Vercel does these things is it uses like a WebBrick. It uses WebBrick or Rack, although I haven't gotten Rack to work in the past. So I just use like a handler and it calls that and like mounts it somehow. And so what became a thing for me was like, okay, how can I reverse engineer how they are running this in production so that I can effectively run it locally and also run it correctly in tests? And so that was basically my thing of like, how do I use WebBrick and mount a proc onto a server and bind that address? And I figured it out, but that was just kind of like a excursion of like, how does WebBrick work?
So is it Vercel or Vercel?
I think you could say it either way.
I think you did say either way, and now that's why I'm having a crisis.
I always thought it was Vercel.
I think it's Vercel, but I've also heard, I don't know what I've heard. Usually call it Vercel.
It sounds cooler to call it that.
Yeah. They just came out with some really interesting database and Redis stuff.
Tell us more.
I don't know a lot about it. I've been watching Vercel for a long time, and they continue like putting out stuff that's impressive to me, even though I don't write JavaScript. But I host all my Bridgestone sites on there. I can literally write Ruby serverless functions. Like I wrote a Podia bot, like a Slack bot using
the deploy bot.
Yeah. I ended up rewriting it in Sinatra, putting it on Heroku for some reason.
Did you know that Roto's 4 times faster than Sinatra?
There we go. It's all highs and lows for me today.
Andrew, I love you so much. That's why I'm trying to get you to come to Memphis.
Yes, I will come.
It's not a question.
Yeah,
I'm coming.
He'll be here.
I will.
Yay.
Speaking of Vercel's database stuff, we talked to Crunchy Data at RailsConf. So Crunchy Data hosted Postgres, and I really like Crunchy Data. I really like Craig. He spoke
I do too.
at Southeast Ruby a couple years ago, and I had awesome conversations with Craig. But it also made me think when you said that Planet Scale announced a few months ago their super boost functionality or something like that.
Yep.
And it made me want to use MySQL because I just think it's so cool that they're doing all that stuff with databases. I don't know.
That's funny you say that because not recently I was having a crisis, one of many, but I was like, it would be beneficial for my life and my job to better at Postgres. But I really want to try Planet Scale. And I'm like, I think I made database on there, and then I let it die because I was like, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? Why am I writing SQL on my phone and then executing it into it? It just doesn't make sense.
I think they have a pretty generous free tier. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
5 gigs of storage, 1 billion row reads a month, 10 million writes. It's not actually limited by rows like your Heroku databases. It's just like reads and writes, which is excellent. Yeah. There's 5 gigs of storage, so that can be varying or whatever. But yeah, pretty awesome. Because Heroku's database was like 10K rows or something. And
something like
you can do virtually nothing and hit 10K pretty fast.
Well, and they got rid of all their free tiers. I had an app that has just been running for free. It was like the first thing I ever built for someone. And I hadn't talked to that dude in years. And I had to be like, hey, do you still use this app? And he's like, yes. I'm like, well, you're going to have to pay for it now after 6 years. And that was not a fun conversation.
Convert it to MySQL and slap it on Planet Scale.
Well, what I actually tried to do was host it on Hatchbox. But the problem was I built it. I think it's like Rails 3. It's old Ruby, old Rails, and trying to update the version caused a ton of specs to fail. And
you need to update the version because we should be fine on old. Some of your dependencies that might need C extensions are going to be the issue, but I do have every version of Ruby back to 1.8.7 just fine on Hatchbox. But like we have to compile OpenSSL and then tell it to use that when, we compile Ruby. So any of your gems would probably have to grab the source code for some old C extension. And that's probably what we may end up doing is like allowing you to choose an older Ubuntu server, but unfortunately, like they're insecure. So it's like, it's just like, I don't want to encourage that either, but it's a problem.
Well, if they're insecure, why don't you want to encourage them?
The end result, I've spun up Docker for the first time. Like I was doing all this stuff. And the end result was, it would just be easier for me to just email this guy and tell him it's going to be $10 a month.
Yeah, you already spent $50 of your time to then come to the conclusion I should have just told him that.
Along with my little serverless thing, I was like, actually, maybe I need a Rails app. And then I was like, well, I can't host it on Heroku for free anymore. And there's no point in me making a Rails app if I can't connect to it elsewhere because the whole thing is basically API related. And it looked like Fly is like your best kind of option for getting maybe like a hobby app. I don't know for how long, but it looked like I could deploy something for free on Fly.
It's like 256 megs of RAM for the free tier on Fly. So
it's not a lot, right?
Not great for a Rails app.
Not great for a Rails app.
Doesn't Fly require you to use a Docker file?
Yeah, but I've been running Docker since 2018, dude.
What they do is they like generate a Docker file for you, looking at your Rails app and stuff. So that it's trying to be like a Heroku build pack kind of situation, but they run on Firefly VMs. So they're not like, they're containers or whatever, but not running like a Kubernetes or anything behind the scenes. It's like supposed to be a lot faster for the underlying tech, but up to 3 shared CPU 1X 256 megabyte VMs on the free tier, which is not great.
Yeah, but I'm not making an app for people to log into and do stuff with. I'm basically making an API.
Yeah, and you could definitely do it 4 times faster with Rhoda.
So angry that you just said that.
Nobody could see those eyes roll.
I mean,
but us.
They roll all the way to St. Louis, dude.
Their Fly's servers are cheap though. Like the 512 is $3.19 a month. So like that's awfully cheap compared to most of the other places. So it is probably the one that I want to see succeed the most is Fly. They're actually trying to innovate where like Render's kind of like Heroku is a little outdated. Let's just like do an updated version of it. They're like really genuinely innovating at Fly, and that's what I want to support and see succeed. I really like that. Render's fine, but it's not trying to do anything new, I think.
This is where I say I want Hatchbox to succeed.
I do too, and it will. But it's also like not trying to compete in the same realm. But what's nice is nobody cares about our like niche of customers. So it's like, well, we succeed because nobody cares because we will never have that trillion-dollar business that like the VCs want to fund for these Heroku competitors. So we are succeeding for sure, but in a different way. We care about the little guys. They don't.
I'm still very happy using it for Jobboardly, especially now it's set up. It's been running for over a year. I mean, it just runs. It's great.
Yep. One of the things that we will end up trying to improve is sort of remember the days where Heroku was like, oh, you got to update your stack and the next deploy is going to be like on the new stack. That was effectively like a major Ubuntu version upgrade, which meant all the dependency versions change. So we're going to end up in that same situation where like upgrading will have to happen at some point soon. Our old Hatchbox customers are on Ubuntu Xenial, which is past its 5 years of support, which kind of sucks. So we'll probably end up with that too on the new one, but we don't support back to Xenial because the new version started 2 years ago or whatever. So we are getting to that point where eventually even customers right now who are on Bionic will want to upgrade to JME. So I'm going to try and work on a sort of upgrade process for those. The other option is kind of like, if you have a load balance cluster, deploy a new server on the new version, make sure all your stuff compiles and deploys fine on that. And then you could just take the old server out of rotation. But it'd be nice to be able to in place upgrade a server too. So I'm going to try and do that. If we detect that like your version changed, we can like stop your apps, delete all the Ruby versions, and then redeploy your apps so that they're on the new, because we got to basically recompile Ruby and all the C extensions and other library versions. So it's not like an easy upgrade, unfortunately, or whatever, but we'll have a process for that. It'll have a little bit of downtime as you upgrade. But again, it's one of those where like, if you're wanting to save money, that's a great way. Having an hour of maintenance mode or something on the weekend is not a big deal. And you don't have to run a load balancer and then take us one server out of it at a time and rotation and whatever.
Chris, I know you've got a cutoff today. So want to...
Yeah. I'm leaving you guys to cheat on you with another podcast. How does that make you feel?
Well, I felt fine about it until you worded it like that. And
yeah.
Now I'm pissed off.
Just great. Another high and low. Another high and low for Andrew.
Yeah.
Now I'm going through trauma again.
The roller coaster of emotions today.
We have an employee coming back to Podia and one leaving today. So it
coming
was
back like they left, and
yeah, and
that's cool.
They always come back.
Pretty rare, I think.
Yeah, but it's like something really good and something really bummer. Just made a really neutral day.
Yeah. Man, that's a great testimonial though. Like most people leave companies and like, I'd never want to come back here, but to have a place where like people come back is amazing. That's great.
It's cool.
It's a rare occurrence.
Tell CJ I miss him and hi.
Yeah, I didn't mention, but I'll be on the Build and Learn podcast with CJ Via and Colin Loretz, who I gave the webhooks workshop at RailsConf with. So have to check out that podcast whenever it goes live. I don't know. We're recording today, May 12th.
It'll probably come out before this one.
It might. So who knows? Keep your eyes peeled. Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Well, see you next week.
Peace.